Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I would like you all to give a warm welcome to our main speaker, Andy C.
I'm Andy. I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank Faith for having me come out here and speak. I think just the planets are aligned wrong because I've just had like hell week. You know, it's all good. You know what, I usually start at the beginning. I could just tell you about my day. Today's my mother's birthday, and I, like your first speaker, I'm emotional, and just bear with me. And I do believe, too, that if I ever was tested, I would definitely have ADD, too. So I kind of seem to jump around a little bit, and so just try to stay with me, or don't stay with me. Today's my mom's birthday, and that would be kind of a cool thing, but she's been dead for 8.5 years, and it bums me out sometimes, and it's just a hard day sometimes for me. And then I got my dream job, and it's out in Lakewood, California, and it's and I do tours to all the major sporting events, and so we were all excited, the first year of Daytona 500, and then that hideous accident, and I just thought, and then I don't know, that Sunday, watching him hit that wall head on and walking on the Dale Earnhardt, I'm just going to talk about him for a minute, watching him walk out there with his son and his wife were there, and having to see that, just thought, man, it bummed me out. And my son I have an 8-year-old son that was watching it on TV, and he was making fun of me. He goes, yeah, my mom even cries during Bambi. But back to today, and so I was feeling a little funky, but I got out, and it's in the pouring rain, and got the kids all ready for school, and went out, and my car wouldn't start. And I thought, damn, they probably left the interior light on. And I've had this van for like 8 years, and it's never not started. So I thought I'd call AAA. They came out, jumped it. It was a starter. So I took it out to Cerritos Auto Square. Now this is a really cool thing, and Faith is going to make her laugh, because we actually played on conflicting softball teams for about 8 years, our arch rivals, and I was all those years of playing sober softball and being completely humiliated out there have paid off, because I am now the proud owner of the T-ball Cubs. I am all managing a little league up in Culver City. I have all 4- and 5-year-olds. Not one child on my team has ever played baseball before, a T-ball, and it's cool, and then, so I got my car to Cerritos Auto Square, and I just got to work and frantic, and then we had our first managers meeting Thursday night, and they had the news on at work, and a woman found bodies found in Culver City Park, and man, it was found up at our baseball field, a woman in her 30s, and I'm thinking, man, I didn't want to hear that today. And then they promised me I'd have my car at 2:30. I have to get, 3 kids at El Marino, 3 kids at the Montessori Learning Center, and be at Lindbergh Park at 4 o'clock for baseball practice. My car was not ready at Cerritos Auto Square until 4 o'clock. So I kind of missed the whole baseball. It just was not a good day. Then Faye said, oh, Emerson in Manchester. So I got up there, and I don't know, I turned right on, and there's this big old church. There's 1 million people. I thought, man, this is a big meeting. And there's actually a funeral up there for a young man named Sean Roberts. So that's where I was wandering around, and finally, I'm such why is that so funny? I just and I feel like this is how I've just felt all day. I'm like, excuse me, is this a Methodist? Or she's like, no, it's Catholic. Like all the crucifixes, like 9 feet tall, should have been an indication. But so, you know, I thought, damn, I couldn't find the place. I went to the Nazarene church. I went to the, I know where all the churches are in Westchester now. But you know, it's all good. It's just, life is coming at me. I honestly too, I hate Shakey's. I hate their food. I had dinner there Monday night, Wednesday night. It's not, you know, we had a coaches meeting there last Thursday. We had a fundraiser for my daughter Monday night. Had to be there, leave there, be at my son's blue and gold rib Boy Scout, thank you. Back, Tuesday night coaches meeting, back to Shakey's Wednesday night for now my daughter's school, back to, I can't even remember, oh, school, then I had to leave there, I went back to college. What was I thinking? Like I don't have enough to do, and so I'm back. It's just like, just been on and on this week, but you know, it's really good to be here. I thought, you know, and it's that time of the month for all the women. So here I am. You got the best. You know, I don't know. It's so funny. I love that. I actually stick with the winners. I always think to myself, you know, this room would be empty if we stuck with the winners. Or my other thought is, I don't know. I think when I was new, I wouldn't have had any friends for a long time, but sort of me and my loser friends seemed to stay sober on one side of the room, and maybe all the winners stayed sober over there. Actually, this young lady that was on Face softball team that had about 2 days more sobriety than me, God, I hated this girl. I hated her. She was the star of Mona. She was the star of the baseball team. She was dating all the right guys. She drove this cute little Fiat convertible. Her dad had an apartment in she made me sick. You know, I was on cleanup Saturday night, me, the nun, and 30 guys, and they kept telling me stick with the women. You know, what they used to say in our group is no one on Saturday night cleanup ever got drunk. So I can remember going to the women's sag and saying, well, it's me and Pat the nun and about 30 men. Now, how am I supposed to stick with the women? And they're like, oh, we'll talk to you after the meeting. I felt like they were always kind of trying to get me to sort of just be quiet and sit still and listen. I don't know what I'm talking about. You know, I just want to say faith was really good to me when I was new, and I don't think it was very easy to be kind to me. Like, when I see people in the back of meetings kind of mumbling and talking to themselves, and I have to do this seat police thing at Sunday night Ohio Street, and I hate, because it seems like, and I have to tell people if you don't have a seat, you can't stay for the meeting, which I never do anyhow. I always give them my seat, or I send them in the kitchen, but it always seems like the people that come late that need to be there the worst. But there was this old drunk guy in the back of the meeting. He actually wasn't that old, he was pretty young, but obviously living on the streets, and some guy went and he was just loud, and I went back and I just said to him, this was actually just Sunday, I said, you know what, I really want you to stay for the meeting, but if you stay, you have to be quiet. And he was quiet for the whole meeting. I thought, God, I couldn't believe it. I felt like, God, who says I'm not powerful? But whatever, I don't know what I'm talking about. You know, back to when, and I'm sorry that your child, you know, it sounds like you didn't mind it, but you know, I had a great childhood. And I actually had a mother and father who loved me. They wanted me. You know, I have a sister that's 2.5 years older than me. We were planned. I had a big white dog named Poochie. We had an orange cat named Susie. You know, life was good. My dad was in the hotel business. We got transferred out to California from Miami. I was a year old. We ended up living in you know, the slum of Santa Monica, California. You know, it was beautiful. We lived like a mile from the beach. You know, I grew up in Rustic Canyon. I went to Canyon Elementary. I got in trouble very early on in school in the 1st grade. My mother pulled me out. We went to school out in Agoura. It was actually the late 60s, the early 70s. I'm 37 years old. I'm 17 years sober. I learned how to ride horses, tie-dye t-shirts, play Proud Mary on the acoustic guitar. They believe no books, no classes, no structure, no discipline. Kids will learn when they're ready. I can tell you it doesn't work. I went to junior high school not knowing how to read. I was labeled dyslexic. I kind of, in just my opinion, it was sort of the label of the era. Like I said, I'm sure if they tested me today, I'd have that ADD or whatever it's called. And, you know, too, and I developed a really attitude early on in my life that kind of carried me, that attitude, like I'll do whatever I want, nothing will happen to me, and sort of, and I believe too, when you're young, you're bulletproof, and it's like, I love that. I love roller coasters. I love riding the biggest waves down at the beach. I loved riding the biggest, fastest horses. You know, I love that feeling of my guts in my throat. I just love that. And, you know, I never wanted, I just thought life was a big old party. I think in hindsight, I guess that we call that spoiling our children. You know, I pretty much got like came home, told my mom we want to learn how to ride horses. Like, she didn't bring us to the pony rides. We were out in Malibu, you know, riding horses on the beach. I told her, you know, I want to play guitar. You know, she took me guitar, to all that stuff. And, but okay, now I'm in junior high. I don't know how to read. And we ended up, actually they called it a free school. It was called Summerhill Day School. It ended up down at Venice Beach. And I went to school, you know, I was used to being barefoot with my tie-dyed hip-hubbard striped bell-bottoms and t-shirts, and I never wore shoes. And I end up at Paul Revere Junior High, and I'm like 14, 15 years old. I don't know how to read, and I just thought, culture shock. I didn't know where I belonged. I believe, too, for me, that alcoholism and puberty was just a brutal combination, just brutal. I'm like that. I'm a reefer madness kid. You know, I started smoking pot, leads to shooting heroin. It's true. I drank completely out of control. You know, there's no doubt that I'm an alcoholic. But I can tell you, too, that I believe for me that I use drugs to control my alcoholism. If I could have drank a little more successfully, there would have been no need to use drugs. I got in so much trouble and was so out of control drinking from the beginning that I started using drugs, and honestly, I sort of stayed a little more contained. You know, that I ended up going up to Hollywood one night. You know, we were there, as I like to say, you know, we were the original white dopes on punk, and it was like 1977, and I went up to Hollywood. We met a lead singer. He was the lead singer of a punk rock band. We went, and I can tell you, in LA in 1977, it was not the popular, cool thing to do. You know, my reaction to my environment was like, I don't fit in, I don't belong here, up yours. Like, who wants what you have anyhow? It was just like, screw you. You know, by this time I was at Pally High. I went to school a mile from the beach. Feathered hair was in, and those bell bottoms. We wore, you know, black jeans as tight as we could. I cut my hair, I dyed it pink. We'd wear our leather, spike things up to our elbows, and I just didn't care, you know. I started, like I said, this is the best, like, comparison for me of drinking and using drugs. I drank, like I said, totally out of control. At 14, 15 years old, I'd start drinking. I didn't know where I'd end up, who I'd end up with. A lot of times I'd wake up, I'd still be at the party from the night before. I love the little baby here with one shoe. It just reminds me, like, I always had one shoe. I don't know, I'd always lose a shoe. And I think it's something in the genes, like I have a 4-year-old daughter too, and she's always walking around with one shoe on. I don't know what that is, one sock on, but... And we were at this club up in Hollywood, and the police, it actually wasn't in Hollywood. And, you know, I just want to say, like, I grew up, like, I look at it now, I grew up in an area in LA called Rustic Canyon. It's probably one of the nicest areas in all of Los Angeles. Now, I did not even end up in West Hollywood hanging out. Like, I hung out in East Hollywood, like the slums, like kind of almost in Silver Lake. And I like think, what was I doing? You know, I was 16, 17 years old. I was totally out of control. Oh, this is my drug, I started to tell it, but we were at this club one night, all these police showed up, they started clubbing people, and it was like, oh, we were just all drinking and driving. We were standing on the corner yelling white riot. We were chased by the police. They broke my girlfriend's arm. They clubbed him over the head. We had to go to the hospital. He got it was just this whole ordeal. You know, we were interviewed by the fans and the ride, they differ and blah, blah. And we were at a press conference with Connie Chugg at this club we used to hang out, the mask, and it was just this whole ordeal. Probably about a year or two later, I started using drugs. I actually started injecting crystal meth. I used heroin to kick crystal meth. It works. I used a drug called Loads to kick heroin. It was sort of on down the list. I was at a club a couple years later. I don't know what I was using that evening. And there was this band playing, and it was this huge, I just remember this huge room. And we were backstage, and we like came out, and the place was empty. And we went and got in our car and left. And my sister said to me the next day, like, were you at that show last night? And I'm like, yeah, I was there. You know, I found out the reason the place was empty, they had tear gassed it. They had roadblocks set up in the road, and kids were burning them. Like, you know what? I didn't even notice. Got in no trouble, did not get, before I was arrested for inciting a riot. Like, I got in no trouble. I didn't even notice, just got in my car and left. And that was sort of, I kind of just missed a lot. And I think, too, I got sober when I was 20 years old. It's so true. It's like, I didn't learn or do any of the stuff like growing up you do, like your first love or your first, I just want to make, I can kind of talk about this forever. I ended up living in the back of a nightclub up in San Francisco. My boyfriend was the lead guitarist for a band called Verbal Abuse. He used to tell me, Andy, you're so calm when you're sleeping. By this time, his band was like the most important thing. That was all. I met him one night. I lived at this girl's crash pad. He elbowed me in the face one morning. I looked over, kind of with one eye. He had dark hair, light skin, kind of cute. He said, come on, you want to come stay with me in the Verbal Abuse condo? I said, sure, I'll go. It was a van parked in the parking lot of Church and Market up in San Francisco. We stayed there. I ended up living. I actually was just this week, too, filling out. I think this depressed me also. I just have so many highlights from this week. I got one of those questionnaires for my 20-year high school reunion. What was the most unusual job you had? I think I love that. It's not fun. We lived at a place called the Grand Central Hotel and Hot Tub Club in San Francisco, up at 11th and Market Street. It was one of those places. The hotel was down the hallway, and you could sit on the bed and touch both walls. And they had a hot tub club thing going on downstairs, and so when we needed extra money or we needed to stay there, we'd go wash towels. I'm not going to go into detail, whatever, in a vague look at what it was like. By this time I'd actually, I'd just backtrack real quick. My sister, too, out of high school was using heroin, and she's real quiet, and we're like the complete opposite. And we're like the older kid, younger kid textbook. She went and got a job as a bank teller. She was promoted the quickest and the youngest bank teller that World Savings has ever had, but she was a heroin addict and she was embezzling money. When she got this job, my parents had moved all their accounts there. So one day they went to get some money out and all their accounts were frozen. And that's when the process started. I guess I was about 17 years old, of Mom and Dad trying to get me sober. So they put her on methadone, and I went and stayed with relatives in Illinois for 2.5 months, and I was sober. I was completely sober. All that happened is I gained a lot of weight, and I got addicted to video games and soap operas. And I thought, if this is at 17, if this is sobriety, I don't want it. I came back to LA. That's when I ended up in San Francisco. There was a PSA midnight flight for $25. And I wound up there, and the guy in the band, yet another lead guitarist. Actually, you know what, too? I don't really keep in touch. That's just a part of my life. I mean, the people that I'm friends with and that are in my life today from my past are the people that are sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's just the way it is. I mean, I'm willing to help anyone or talk to anyone, but I got a call. It was probably about a month ago, and the singer of that band My girlfriend told me he got 25 years in a Texas prison for massive amounts of crystal meth. And my first thought was, man, you know, Nicky won't do very good in a Texas prison. And my second thought was, I can't believe he lived that life for another 17 years. You know, this was my life. We lived in the back of the nightclub. When they'd start rehearsing, get up at 2 in the afternoon to the guitars, boom, boom, boom. And I was on welfare up there. I'd panhandle up on Broadway. I could make like $20 in 20 minutes, and that was enough. You know, I'd given up. Like I told you, I tried sobriety. I had actually been to some Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. It's around the time CA was getting started. I went to a CA meeting. I'm one of those people too. I hear what I want to hear. All I remember is, well, first of all, there was a lot of movie stars there, which wasn't, I don't know, they weren't very friendly. And they said, they got up to the podium and said, you know, I went out and I chipped a little this weekend. And he said, and everybody applauded. I thought, cool, they use drugs on the weekends around here. You know, we stole the hot chocolate and left, and I never thought anything about it. I thought, too, that my problems was drugs. I was drinking alcohol when I was sober, and it just, and like I said, by this time, too, I'd sort of given up. And I ended up back here in LA. My sister was driving a bobtail truck. She was driving around LA reclaiming oil. And I came back to town and was working with her, and, you know, before long we were down at Venice Beach copping speed in the morning. So, and then I took off again and come back, and kind of that thing, I'd come home to mom and dad and get a few good nights rest and get good meals in me. And once I physically felt better, I would be off and running again. And I just couldn't not do it. And but I just couldn't, you know, I couldn't stay away from my friends. I couldn't stay away from Hollywood. And so I ended up back down at Venice Beach. It seems like, too, no matter where I go, it's like I come to one morning and I'm back at Venice. We were at these apartments right at the end of Navy, there where the Davy Jones liquor locker was, and we were selling, for this guy had left us, and this is why I've never been very fond of pot smokers, he smoked a lot of pot, and he'd start these projects, and he decided to re-sheetrock the apartment. So there was about 2 feet of sheetrock on the floor. I don't know what he was doing in the bathroom, but he had the sink pulled out of the wall, and it was sitting in the bathtub. It was like when cordless phones had just come out, and so we had like this cordless phone. I mean, this place was poor. I mean, there was like 2 feet of sheetrock on the floor. There was no running because the sink was sitting in the bathtub. We had this cordless phone we could never find. There was like glass that overlooked all of the beach. We were way too paranoid to stand up in front of that. We were selling crystal meth. My name's Andy. It was one of those you call up from the street, and so we throw the key down to let him in. And there was a Quaalude dealer that lived across the street named Randy. My name's Andy. So it seemed like there was people on the street 24 hours a day going, Randy, Randy. I don't even know what they were calling. And then they were having this campaign to let's clean up Navy, and the police were down there. They'd kick out all the homeless, and they'd all come back, and they'd kick out all the homeless. And it was like, and I actually hooked up with a skate team in San Francisco, Jack's team. And so some of those guys were here. What they were was a bunch of junkies that rode skateboards. And so some of them were here, and he had left, this guy, this apartment it was, he had left us with a whole bunch of speed to sell and just went on tour. Just left us like that. The only time we left that apartment was between like 3 and 7 in the morning, and went and skated down on the boardwalk and talked to those guys down there. The party was over. It wasn't fun anymore. It wasn't. I was sick, and it was kind of like I was dying, and I knew it. Nothing, and I can even remember too, like nothing excited me anymore. There was nothing to look forward to. It was just like that, nothing, man. Like I got to tell you, at least when I'm in pain today, at least I know I'm alive. Like at least I know I'm feeling something. And that extreme like paranoia, where it's just not fun anymore at all, set in. It was like, it was horrible. I think that one of the girls, I don't know, somebody called my sister, and this time she wasn't so quick to come down and get me. She finally did in a couple hours. She brought her softball coach and her sponsor and Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know she had gotten sober in a real active group on the west side while I was gone again this time. And when she had, I think, about 30 days of sobriety, she had gotten a call from the federal courts. They wanted to talk to her about her banking career. She had made a deal with the bank to pay them back, but apparently it's a federal offense, and the federal, they didn't care, so she was being prosecuted by the federal courts. So it was sort of, I think, of her best interest to stay sober at the time. And so it was, collect from Andy. In the past, she would always come get me wherever I was, and this time she wasn't so willing to come get me anymore. And so like I said, she brought her softball coach and her sponsor. I didn't know who they were. I thought he was an FBI agent. They took me and they fed me and they just talked to me about Alcoholics Anonymous. Finally, they said, do you want to get sober? And I said, I'd love to, but I don't have the time. That's just what I'm told. I have no idea what I was doing. Nothing. I was doing nothing. And my parents actually, I have a mother that was very strong-willed and had never heard or been to Al-Anon. And for that, I'm really grateful because she never gave up on me. And she came back down and got me, and they brought me home in December of 1983. Just make a long story short, and I just really want to say I have no feelings about medication or drugs or diagnosis. I can just tell you, in my case, I'm an alcoholic, and Alcoholics Anonymous has worked for everything and on everything. I came home, I went into a detox on December 1st. I left there and started going to mental institutions. You know what, actually, again, you know what? This is the, it's true. There was this guy in there, and he was 6'2", and he was right out of prison. So he'd been working, and he was really, he walked down the hallways, and all the guys walked a few steps behind him. And, he was just the guy for me. And I thought, and I knew in my gut, man, if I left, I was going to do the same thing all over again. Like if Joey called, I would be off and running again. And I knew that I couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't. And so I even, he had a radio, and you were not allowed to have radios there. He had a radio, and he left it to me. And, the only problem was he had a wife and 3 or 4 kids. I don't know which, but... And he left, and instead of, coming home, I took me from there to mental institutions. And in hindsight, maybe I needed to be locked up. I had never been to a mental institution. At 30 days of sobriety, I got locked up. I got put on a 2-day hold, a 3-day hold. It was a Wednesday night. They had to let me go. I came out. I said to my sister, I want to go to a meeting with you. I don't know. They gave me a drug called Haldol, and I really don't know what happened, but this is what I'm told. And it's a cute baby. And she brought me to the Wednesday night meeting. I got Clancy for a sponsor and a blackout. He sponsored me for about 3 months before I knew what he looked like. And I got locked back up in a mental institution. I got certified insane by the state of California, and all those diagnoses, whatever they are, atypical psychotic, manic depressive. Really, what newcomer in Alcoholics Anonymous is not manic depressive? I can tell you, if you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous, do not go and be evaluated, because you will be manic depressive. I think it's sort of, to me, honestly, it's sort of part of getting sober, that roller coaster. And like I said, I've done nothing. I'm 17 years sober. I've done nothing for 17 years but Alcoholics Anonymous, and it seems to have worked on everything. I'm one of those people, I was 20 years old, and still I thought, if I just get sober, everything should be okay. Every area of my life got worse before it got better. I got in, I started eating. Someone said have a few, some sugar before you go to sleep at night, and it'll help you sleep. And it's like pints of Haagen-Dazs ice cream. I gained 60 pounds my first year of sobriety. So when I got in worse relationships in Alcoholics Anonymous than I did when I was drinking. One pretty cool thing I did, though, is at 6 months of sobriety, I started playing sober softball. And I didn't even know what hand to put the glove on. My 21st birthday, I had 6 months of sobriety. We were out there practicing baseball. Some poor lady was trying to help me. bat, and I ended up smacking her across the head with the baseball bat, and like blood was coming out of her ear. It was totally an accident. But I can remember too thinking, going to our big meeting the next night, and I thought, oh my God, I can't show my face. And it was just stupid stuff like that. Like, oh, the guy's like, where's the newcomer that hit Eunice with the baseball bat? Like, it was like one of those, just the little things that started to make me feel a part of. Plus, you know what, it taught me how to look bad, and it was okay. It taught me how to just kind of get out there in the sunshine with my girlfriends and just have a good time, and just how to kind of be a team player. I can't tell you how much I learned from that, you know, and two, having commitments at meetings. People say, you know, to make it your meeting. I'm thinking, I didn't want it my meeting. That's really exciting when you're 20 years old, you know. But you know what it did for me? You know what it did for me? It's like, it's true. If I did the dishes with the same person for 30 weeks, I sort of, and I just went, like when I was new, I was very antisocial. And I was angry, like just that anger set in. But, and I didn't know it, but like doing the dishes with the same person, you kind of have a friend, you know, whether you want one or not. You know, I had dreadlocks like down to here, and my hair had been red, and it was kind of black, so it was sort of orange is what it was. And like, the more people would say, oh dear, my hair was knotted when I was new. I'll comb it for you. It's like, scrap yours. Like, I was just, you know, the more you gave me a hard time about it, the more it was like, I'm going to do it, you know, and screw you. And we were talking like things I would, you know, be with my girlfriend Amy down at Venice Beach, and we'd like hitchhike to the meeting on Sunday night. It was like, you know, are we going to, and I don't, and I know, like, if you're new, in hindsight, I really don't know, like, I think why I stayed sober, and I truly believe I was done drinking. I would have never, and another reason too, I stay sober today, I never want to have to go through my first year of sobriety again. I was on no pink cloud. It was hideous, and I hated everything about it, and I hated getting sober. And I just think, for me too, that, you know, we talked about coming in and out of AA. I'm not really in and out, because you have to be in and get sober before you can go out. Yeah, I'd hung around Alcoholics Anonymous, but for me, the last time, it was so bad. I mean, and I didn't want to be strapped to bed. I didn't want to be insane anymore. And you know, it's like, and I would have never gone through my first year of sobriety if I thought I could go back out anymore. If there was anything left, or if I could do it anymore, I would have done it. But it's like, when I was backed up against the wall, and I've watched people go in and out, I've watched people do it for years, and I've seen the lights come on and the lights go out. And I think only people, you know, bottom, it can be anywhere, and for some people it's death. But I'm a firm believer, man, if there's life, there's hope. And if they're still breathing in and out, there's hope. You know, I'm not one to give up on anyone. You know, I'm really not. I'm just one of those people, like, it's in my blood, man. I'm for the underdog, and I just am. And I don't know where I went with that, but you know, I talked just a little about relationships and sobriety. Actually, Faith's roommate, who was a really good friend of mine, was working at Kramer Nissan, and there was this kind of handsome man there. He was very handsome back then, and he was really cute. And actually, Faith, I don't know, Michael went to high school with him a long time ago, but whatever. Me and Norma Jean were buddies, and we were running around Hollywood. Like, then after the you know, my first year was hideous, like I said. Instead of, at a year of sobriety, instead of writing my inventory, I slit my wrist and tried to commit suicide. I was willing to do anything but write that inventory. I thought, you know what, I live like that, I don't anymore, I don't want to talk about it, and I can't drink and use anymore, I'm just going to kill myself. And I can tell you, for me, when my life turned around and things changed for me, is when I went back and made an amends. And when I looked at the world different, and when my life turned around and things in my life changed, was when I went back and cleaned up the wreckage of my past. But that she was working with this guy, and he was drinking all the time and shaking, and she started dating him and brought him to Alcoholics Anonymous, and her sponsor said, he's new now, you can't go out with him. I was dating a gentleman who was AWOL'd from the Marines, and I'd given a woman a ride home from a meeting, and he was living in her back room, and the only reason he was sober, because the condition he could live there was that he'd take Antabuse. And so I was not interested in him, but long story short, he had 4 months, almost 4 months of sobriety, as I like to put it, a better part of half a year. And we were at the Southern California Convention, and we sort of got together, and we've been married over 10 years. We've been together almost 14 years. He's a good man, and it's good and bad. I can tell you, it's not what I thought it would be, and it's hard to stay together, and it's hard, and just like it's not. Once I'm here, I always want to be in AA, but I tell you, I got a whole life out there now, and my mom got diagnosed with cancer when I had about 7 years of sobriety, and I went through that with her, and it was actually the most hideous experience of my life, watching someone you love deteriorate, and people that talk even about someone dying being a spiritual thing. I don't really get that. I still don't get that, and I'm sorry, but she went in for back surgery like 3 weeks before we got married, and she was supposed to walk out of there 5 days later, and she never walked again. She lived for about another year and a half. In the meantime, when I was new, she had a little candy store in Santa Monica, and I worked at that candy store and went back to school to be a travel agent. I went to work in travel so I could go see the world, and I got my big job. I was a national travel director for this big magazine, and it was a big old sleazy magazine. But you know what? I did what I said I was going to do, and I showed up on time, and I got promoted real quick, and I did real good there. But when my mom got sick, like I said, with the cancer, I quit that job that meant so much to me, and I went back to run the candy store, and I did it temporarily, and there was a time when I was embarrassed to say I did that, and I did that temporarily for 10 years. I loved that candy store. I loved it. It was the greatest, and it was a great place, and it was really a good thing for a long time. We sold it in January. It was really a hard thing for me. We also, me and Tim, bye, say hi to Jack. And we bought this little condo in Culver City, and I loved living there. I loved everything about it. I loved my neighbors across the hallway. My son's best friend down the street came to, they grew up together, and I loved that. He'd always run down there just in his boxers and his t-shirt, and that little boy died. Just all kinds of things I've been through. You know what? I could just give you all this stuff. The truth is, I'm 17 years sober. I've been out there living life for 17 years. You know what? My mom died 8 hours after my son was born. I believed she was going to be okay, and I believed there was going to be some miracle, and she was going to live. And I went into labor the night of the LA riots. My husband called the Culver City police and said, my wife's going into labor, what should I do? They said, take her to the hospital. I went there. My son was delivered by a black physician in the middle of the LA riots. I don't know why, I think it's funny, I don't know, in my eyes, the sun just shines a little brighter on him. It does. I'm so proud of him. He's a great kid. He's 8 years old. I don't know, in my eyes, he can do no wrong. And my one regret is I never realized what I put my mother through till I had kids of my own. I had no idea. I would do anything for that boy. He's 8 years old. We were talking, he's 8 years old, and he comes up to my chin, and he's a big kid, but he's just a sweetheart, He's an all-star flag football player for Culver City. And then what happened? We sold the candy store. It was just time. Like he was growing up, and I did the candy store thing, and then it just time to do something else. It's just like how there's two things that have changed the way I've looked at the world more than anything. Well, drugs and alcohol and having kids. I just look at the world different. I just want to say too, I know, like when my mom was dying of cancer, I went and filled a prescription for her for 130 milligram morphine sulfate, and I didn't steal her drugs. I shook when I held that bottle, and I was all by myself, and I thought, damn, you know, but I don't use drugs anymore. And my second thought was, do you know what the street value of these are? Like, but you know what? I went to a meeting and I talked about it. And I can tell you, about a week before she died, she called us to the hospital and she said, my lungs are filling up with fluid. Don't come here. You're not going to make it. And we jumped in the car and we ran there and we sat on the bed. And I just said, I think it's my time's up. I just want to tell this story real quick and then I'll sit down. And I said, you know, how can I repay you for being such a great mom and all the good things you did? And she said, you know what, just be good to your kid. Just be good to your kids. And I take that commitment really serious. You know, my kids are super important and they come first. And that's just the way it is now. And it's just sort of like when my mom was dying of cancer. She needed me more. And I spent, the first year we got married, I spent more time with her than I did my husband. And, you know, that's okay too. But also I realized, thank God for that amends step. Because when she was dying, I did everything I was supposed to do. I had been there to all her doctor's appointment. I didn't steal her morphine. You know, and now I got 2 kids. I met one of my biggest fears 4 years ago. I had a little girl, and she's the cutest, sweetest little thing. And then I got a call. You know, I went back, and what I wanted to do was work and travel. In December, I got that job, you know, and I worked for a tour company. It's what I always wanted to do, and I'm doing it. And then I ran into my old instructor from West LA Travel School, and he said, come back and take my class. And I thought I better do it, because he's, you know, and so I did that. And then Monday I got that call, and they said, congratulations, you're the manager of the T-ball Cubs. And all those years of sober softball paid off. You know, I played ball better than any of those women out there. And you know, we were scrimmaging with my son's coach, and he's dogging me in the outfield, and I just hit the ball right over his head. But you know, that's a big commitment, and I take that real serious. You know, those kids look up to me, but you know, it's cool. And just my plate's full. Life is good, and it's all worth it. And I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I love the life I have today. And thanks.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.